Hey everyone, it's Brian here. We will still have our regularly scheduled episode out tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, but today I thought it was important to come on and talk about hiking in this heat. Just an hour or so ago, we got word of the fourth hiking death in the canyon in just the last 3 weeks. On June 16th, a 41-year-old man died near the River Rest House on Bright Angel Trail. On June 29th, a 69-year-old man died on the River Trail between Black Bridge and Silver Bridge. On June 30th, the very next day, a male hiker died while hiking out from Havasupai Falls. And yesterday, July 7th, a 50-year-old man died just 100 feet below the South Rim on Bright Angel Trail at around 2 p.m. while ascending from Havasupai Gardens in the heat of the day. Now, there is no official word on what caused these tragedies, but it is likely, very likely, that heat played a role in most of them. It's obscenely hot in Arizona right now. It was 118 in Phoenix yesterday. It's 116 right now. Temps at Phantom Ranch are supposed to be above 110 all week. In Las Vegas yesterday, it was 120, their all-time record by 3 degrees. It is dry, it is cloudless, and it is simply brutal all across the region. It is not the time to be in the canyon. But if you must, you have to be smart, and you have to make having a plan to mitigate the heat your number one priority. I think some folks from other places underestimate the heat because they hear about how dry it is out here, and it is. But so is the heat in your oven. Folks, it is no joke. This is not the place to come hike in the summer and think, oh, well, I'll just suck it up and deal with it. How bad can it be? It can be bad. It can be really bad. Fatally bad. We're now well over 100 heat-related deaths since records have been kept in the canyon, so potentially 4 more in just the last 3 weeks is not an insignificant number. And how many hospitalizations and rescues and people just struggling through their hikes do we not hear about? A lot. Look, I'm not saying all this to try to scare anyone. What I am saying is please be careful. If you can avoid the canyon until the spring or the fall, please do so. October, November, infinitely better times. But, yeah, we get it. People will never not hike in the summer. So the least we can do is provide as much information as possible and cross our fingers and hope that everyone will be okay. So in light of everything that's going on, I thought this would be a good time to replay a popular interview from back in April. That's when I spoke with Amy Hedke, who along with her partner Gary Teal have made it a habit of doing multi-day backpacking trips in August in the heat of the summer. But they've taken those trips very seriously, and they've gone as far as documenting what has and has not worked for them when it comes to dealing with the heat. Amy has even compiled everything into a Google Doc that she openly shares with others, and we will link to that in the show notes. It is essentially a survival guide for anyone hiking in the canyon during the warmer months, so we encourage you to check that out. On top of that, please check out our Grand Canyon Shade Tracker to see when and where you'll have shade on your route on any day of the year. Yesterday, for example, it would have shown nothing but direct sun on Bright Angel until late in the afternoon, which would be a warning to plan your hike to avoid the sun. The shade can literally be a lifesaver, and that is why we invested in the Grand Canyon Shade Tracker. Please, folks, please use it. All right, I know I keep on harping about hiking in the heat, but listen, it's only because I care. And seeing people succumb to it is a gut punch every single time because usually it is entirely preventable. Please stay safe out there, folks. Here now is that conversation with Amy Hedke. Okay, Amy, over the last 3 Augusts, 2021, 2022, 2023, you and your hiking partner, Gary, have taken on major Grand Canyon hikes, which is against the advice of, just about everyone in the Grand Canyon hiking community to be hiking the canyon in the summer. You say you like the heat. You guys have successfully made it through 3 hikes in the canyon. So I guess my first question to you is, if you had one piece of advice that you could give someone who's thinking about hiking in the warmer months, maybe doesn't have a choice and they have to hike in the warmer months because of school schedule, work schedule, vacation, whatever it is. But if you had just one piece of advice to give them about hiking in the heat in the Grand Canyon, what would it be?
Exercise. The exercise really is your top survival skill if you have nothing else going for you in the canyon. this kind of hike is hard enough as it is, even when everything's going right. But, the stronger you are, the easier your body can adjust and react to adverse conditions. I can't say, that's advice that I should have followed myself, because I can't say that I'm in tip-top shape and could drag somebody off the trail if they needed the assistance. But, I also don't want to let survivor bias, enter in and say, oh, you don't need exercise to get through this. You are going to objectively enjoy your hike a lot better, and you're going to be a more helpful individual, and you're going to enjoy it so much easier if you're not sore and grumpy and tired. So that would be the number one advice.
And when you're talking about exercise, are you talking about exercising in the heat to get acclimated to the heat? Because that's hard on a lot of people.
I would say even the heat, but mostly just cardio and muscles. All the leg work. Don't skip leg day. I know a lot of people talk about stair steps and stuff like that, and I had mentioned to go find a high-rise building and take an elevator to the top and hike down, 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 and then take the elevator back to the top and hike down, 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 and do that for 4 hours straight, and then reverse it and take the stairs up and the elevator down, because your legs don't get that break of going up and then going down and going up and going down. It's just a brutal slog. Boom, 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 boom. And there's a lot of little stuff like, clipping your toenails so your feet aren't getting smashed into your toe box. And, don't just, usually when you're fresh on the trail, you're going down hard and fast. And I was way more out of shape, so I was going slower anyway, but just stepping deliberately and pacing yourself on that initial down is going to help you out too.
Here's what I'll say to that. You could try talking to someone like me. Okay. I consider myself to be I've got the exercise part down. I'm always trained and ready for a rim to rim at a moment's notice. However, when it gets above, say, 75, 80 degrees, something that's the temperature that's that low, and I get in the direct sun, especially as I know you've talked about coming out of the box between Cottonwood and Phantom Ranch, and that long stretch after the box that you call the frying pan, where you're just exposed out there and the sun is just beating down on you. Even if it's 80 degrees, like I said, much less if it's, in August when you hike and it can be 110 degrees, 115 degrees with that direct sun beating on you. How do you handle the heat in a situation like that now that you have so much experience doing it?
That's where you're hiking wet, drench yourself, and wear cotton. NPS tells you to wear cotton for the heat because it holds moisture longer, which in most hiking situations, that's a disaster, you staying wet. But in the Grand Canyon, it's an asset. And I was really skeptical about this at first. And so a lot of people would maybe get their hat wet or just get the blue cooling towels, which are the bomb. But literally, get a long sleeve white cotton shirt and get it soaking, dripping wet, and don't squeeze it out. Don't squeeze out your cooling towel. Just, completely drench your entire torso, and don't even worry about if your shoes get wet, because everything is going to dry so fast, and you're not sweating because it's so dry. And so, the first clue that you might start being dehydrated is if your clothes are dry. If your clothes are dry, get wet again. And so hiking wet is the first thing, and just stay wet. Use the creek water if in the top 3 miles of all the trails. If the water is off, or your South Kaibab, North Kaibab, there's no water spigots very high up, get a Ziploc bag with some water in it and dip your shirt and hat and cooling towels in that water, and have that specifically for hiking wet. We had hydration packs that we filled with ice on the rim, and then you can get ice again at Phantom Ranch. Ice is great for not only injuries, but it can keep stuff in your pack cool also. The first day, 8 days in the canyon this last time around, you're taking, we didn't take a stove because we didn't need the hot meals all the time, and we were trying to keep our weight down. But you kind of run out of foods that are not just, the same old. So that first night down, I usually tell people, you've got a whole bag of ice in your pack. So take something that's perishable that you won't be able to eat later on. Smoked salmon, something like that, cold cuts, whatever. So ice and then a sun umbrella. We added a sun umbrella to our kit this time around, and those things are pretty amazing. We see the rangers hiking with them, and a lot of people are like, "Oh yeah, just take an umbrella." And I'm like, it's a significant difference. We had 2 thermometers with us this last time around, and we put one outside the umbrella and up under the umbrella, and it was a 20-degree difference. That's substantial, and it helps your body work easier. And between trekking poles and sun umbrella, the blue cooling towels, hike wet, electrolytes. Make sure don't skimp on those. You don't want to be drinking straight electrolytes. You need to alternate to maintain that salt water balance in your body, but all of that just adds up.
What do you do for electrolytes? Because I've found that using like the liquid IV, I think that's too sweet, at least for me, mixing it in drinks. And I found that I prefer to take the electrolyte tablets and capsules because it's just easier to get them right into your system. What do you guys do? What have you found that works for you when it comes to electrolytes?
I don't like drinking water. I'm a Cokes chick. So for me, I just use the Walmart electrolyte flavor packets, which is probably not what anybody would recommend. I have since found some liquid electrolytes via the Keto Chow website, and that's what I would be using. But I like the flavor. Most of it's like the Nun tablets and the liquid IV. For me, none of that is sweet enough. So. And I would say the electrolytes really is just a matter of preference for people. And I think the number one factor is take whatever you like, because if you don't like drinking it, you won't drink enough.
Yeah.
So taste test a bunch of different ones, take whatever.
Yeah, that goes for eating as well. It's not just... It does come down to eating and drinking what you like, because you can plan everything out all you want and take what you think you should take, like organic trail mix and bars and things like that. But you're not going to feel like eating, especially when you're hot, you're tired, you're getting your body all beat up. So it's got to be, you got to take things that you like to eat. If it's a Snickers bar, great. If it's Sour Patch Kids, great, as long as it's something that you will feel like consuming.
Yeah, a Snickers bar in your body is better than the Cliff bar that's uneaten in your pack because you don't feel like eating it. And that's kind of like, every time you stop to get water, it's, stop and drink the water and put it in your body. And then whatever you don't drink, fill up everything else. Because the water inside your body is it doesn't work if it's in a container. Drink, and same thing with the sunscreen. That's it's like in politics. If I'm not working the polling location, it doesn't do me any good to take the sunscreen if I never put it on. So applying the sunscreen is a big deal. Protect your skin from the sun, because that sun will just dry you up like a prune, and that saps the energy and just your comfort level, and it's hard to function if you're sunburned. So sunscreen, and not just on your arms, but the back of your hands, the back of your legs, ears, the whole bit. So So protect your skin.
Well, I've always found it counterintuitive that so many people say that hiking in the summertime and in the warmer months in the Grand Canyon, that they hike totally covered up. You wear a sun hoodie, a cooling hoodie, and a wide-brimmed hat, and pants, and long sleeves. So you're basically totally covered. It seems so counterintuitive to me. I haven't even actually tried doing that yet. Maybe I should. But is that what you found works for you in the summer?
Absolutely. And Gary's mentioned it a couple times. Take a cue from the Bedouins. They're wearing your big, loose, flowing clothing that does protect them, but it breathes. I tend to like my stretchy yoga pants. They're these athletic capris. They've got big pockets for the phone and anything else, and but a big loose cotton shirt, clothing that is not restrictive. And I like the spandex. I like the spandex because it moves with your skin and with your body. It's not staying put and chafing so much. But Body Glide, chafing cream, whatever you need, moisturizers and eye creams, whatever it is that you're used to that will help you stay comfortable on your hike. It's going to help your morale, and it's going to help just everything, every little thing, because every little discomfort on hiking in triple-digit heats is exponentially experienced and just horrible. A little blister is bad enough, but when you're pairing it with 112 degrees that you're trying to get through, and you're triple tired because of the heat, I stumbled across a Grand Canyon National Park post about Grand Canyon resting face. When you're not happy anymore and you're tired and nobody wants to hike with you anymore. It was a hilarious post, but it's true. It's true. I was looking over my notes from two years ago, and I had mentioned in my notes I was really grumpy at this point. It happens. It happens. Get in the creek and cool down and submerge your entire organs down in the water, not just dip your toes in the water. But you've got to stay cool. One of the incidents that I was reading about, the death in the Grand Canyon stuff, and I think this was someone who didn't die, or maybe they did. By the time the rescue crews got there, this guy had a core body temperature of 107. His body temperature was 107. And so, you cannot take this lightly. And I know every once in a while in the comments, people talk about, well, you don't want to drink cold water. Your body can handle handle body temperature water fast, can absorb it faster. But most people don't want to drink warm water. And whatever it takes to get the water into your system, do it. If you like warm water, go for it. If you want the cold water, drink it.
Yeah, I agree with that. We're not scientists here or anything like that, and I've heard that too, that people say that you're not supposed to drink cold water, that it should be already essentially body temperature when you drink it. But when you're on a difficult hike like this, and it's super hot outside or even warm outside, and you get a swig of that warm water, at least for me, and I think you think so too, it's like, nope, I don't feel like drinking it, so I'm not going to drink as much. So the cold water, as long as you can get it, is useful.
I want my ice. I want my ice, man. And that goes back to taking a backpacking filter and filtering the creek water, because the creek is cold. It's still cold, even when it's 112 degrees outside.
Well, and it goes beyond that when it comes to the filters. And I think that this is a very important point to make, is that it's not about taking a filter necessarily to filter cold creek water just to have cold water, but you always have to have a filter in the Grand Canyon, no matter what, whenever you're in the canyon, because the water sources are not always on. They're subject to having pipeline breaks and maintenance shutdowns at a moment's notice, actually with no notice. So you do not want to get caught in the canyon without a way to get water. So one of the number one tips for hiking in the Grand Canyon, it's not even a tip, it's a requirement. You have to have a filter with you at all times. Yeah.
And this goes back to, knowing resources is the big hydration post that is pinned in the featured posts on the Grand Canyon Rim to Rim group. It talks specifically about know where all your natural sources are, and prepare to filter all of your water, and just be pleasantly surprised when a spigot actually works.
Yeah. And there are opportunities to get water if everything is on Bright Angel and on North Kaibab, just about the entire way between Phantom Ranch and Manzanita, where Bright Angel Creek runs alongside the trail almost the entire way, or at least in an accessible location. If you hike on South Kaibab, though, and I know you've run into people running into trouble on South Kaibab, not knowing when they're hiking up, no matter what time of year, that there is no water availability whatsoever on South Kaibab. No place to filter, no other sources, no pipeline spigots run through there. So you're on your own on South Kaibab, and it's a very, very, very bad idea to be on South Kaibab in the summertime, especially going up.
Another good caution is that on South Kaibab at the tip-off shelter, they did set up a rain harvesting water barrel. But so it's one of those things that, know it's a resource, a possible resource, but do not rely on it at all, because there might not be anything there, and it still needs to be filtered.
What do you do for water? What have you found that works for you, just hydration-wise, in terms of how much you're carrying? I think most people, a 2-liter bladder is about the standard. You can get up to a 3-liter bladder. What have you found that works for you in the canyon?
We carry a ton of water. We've got 2 and 3 liter water bottle or bladders. The 2 water bottles that go in my front waist pack for electrolytes, and then I usually have 2 or 3 additional liters in the collapsible water flasks in our bags, and it's a ton of weight, but especially the first descents down, no matter which trail you go down, the first 3 miles there's no water. You get to Supai Tunnel and you might get the spigot if it's on, but otherwise your next shot at water is Manzanita. And if the spigots aren't on at Bright Angel, you've got to make it all the way to Havasupai Gardens, and South Kaibab, you have to make it at least to the tip off for even a shot at any water. But that's all the way to the Colorado. And if you need to hike wet, you need water to be wet and maintain wet and get everything wet again. And then just the drink. And I tend to drink a lot anyway, so I always plan for more water. I think there's only been like one day in our 3 trips that we made it to our next water station, our planned water refill spot, and we were almost out of water. So far we have done a pretty good job at not running out of water and assessing how much we need and making sure we took more than we needed. So, always take more than you need as far as I'm concerned. And not just for yourself, but I mean, if you run into somebody who's in flip-flops and didn't bring water at all and just got sucked down into the canyon and weren't prepared for that hike back up, it's nice to be able to have something extra that you can spare to help somebody else. So I might not be in shape to drag their butts up, but I can at least prepare in other ways and give them some medication, or I hear some, and that's the other thing. A lot of people don't use ibuprofen or your NSAIDs because it messes with your kidneys, and I'm like, I'm taking the meds, man. I'm taking the meds.
Yeah. Again, we're not doctors here. We're not putting out medical advice, but I feel the exact same way with ibuprofen. For example, if I'm doing a rim to rim in a day and I start down South Kaibab and I get to Phantom Ranch and wonder why I'm already not feeling very well, why my knees are already killing me.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll be like, oh my gosh, I forgot to take ibuprofen. It makes a huge difference with the inflammation and soreness and joint pain. But again, we are not medical professionals, so check with your doctor. But I highly recommend it personally. Yeah. Okay, so if we're wrapping this whole thing up, you have proven that you can hike rim to rim in the Grand Canyon in August during the hottest time of the day. I don't think that's necessarily on the bucket list of very many people out there, but you've proven it can be done. And what do you think has overall, what has been the key to that?
Patience, perseverance, and just being willing to read lots of different advice, advice from lots of different people, and learn from everybody else's mistakes, and just put it all together in a timeline that works for you. Know what your weaknesses are, know what your strengths are, and mitigate all the weaknesses you can, and reinforce those strengths. There's so much to see and so much to do, and you're right. Not everybody can get there during the best hiking times of the year, and even when you're there during those times, the trails can be pretty crowded. And that's one of the things that I did notice in some of these posts is, the rangers talk about ramping up for the big tourist season. So there's concerns with that. There's concerns in the summer. There's concerns in the winter. I mean, I would freak out trying to hike on icy trails, and being cold. I'd rather be hot and miserable than cold and miserable. So it's just a matter of whatever you can handle, hike your own hike thing. Those of us that live in Texas versus those that live in Minnesota or Canada are there for different reasons. So, I do want to point out this other thing though. Not just the hike wet and the trekking poles and the exercise and your wide brimmed hats and the umbrellas, but if you're camping, we took a little USB neck fan, and that was really helpful just in trying to get to sleep at night, because a lot of people think that they'll get down there and set up their tent and the sun will go down and things will cool down. It doesn't work like that at all, and that really surprises a lot of people. So if you're going to camp, get a good sleeping pad, and be prepared for the heat. Heat wave number 2 that happens when the sun goes down and the canyon walls release all that heat that they've been storing up. So be prepared, know all these things, and just research and write it all down. That's one of the things that, even now, I keep thinking, oh yeah, I wanted to add this other thing to these notes, because there's so many little things that just add up to either make or break it. And, like I said, just as one little thing can exponentially impact how you proceed, one mitigation can exponentially help and relieve a lot of things. So it all adds up.
That was Amy Hedke. We are grateful for her time and her hard-earned wisdom. Thank you so much, Amy. Earlier I'd mentioned the last 2 weeks in May and the first 2 of October is the most ideal in the limited rim-to-rim window, but I just have to say, I can tell you as someone who lives here in Arizona and takes short hikes in the heat almost daily, even those weeks can get too hot for my liking. There are some years here in Phoenix where temps on Halloween can be in the mid-90s, and you know what they say, Phoenix temperatures are very similar to those at Phantom Ranch. That's why my personal preference for rim to rim is the very end of October all the way through November. That's when you're all but guaranteed the lingering heat will finally be gone, and I found conditions to be close to perfect. Even though services on the north side are shut down during that time, the gate to the north rim does remain open until December 1st, unless snow forces it to close earlier. And the Trans-Canyon Shuttle does run well into November, so rim to rims are still possible after the North Rim closes, perhaps just a little bit tougher logistically, since the only place to stay near the North Rim is 45 miles away at the Jacob Lake Inn. So tougher, but still doable. If you are planning a hike in the warmer months, like we've been saying, totally understandable, totally doable, and we've got something else that can really help you out. This is really what our Grand Canyon Shade Tracker is made for. I promise you, this is one of the coolest tools you will ever use. It's totally free. You can find it at our website, brightangeloutfitters.com, or at gcshadetracker.com if you prefer. What it lets you do is enter your route, like, say, rim to rim, or even a landmark, like the Box or Devil's Corkscrew. And then you'll enter the date of your hike. And just like that, you will be able to see exactly where the shade will be on your hike, right down to the minute. I mean, minute by minute. It's incredible. Last year, I was doing a rim to rim from north to south, and I wanted to avoid the heat and exposure that you get from Manzanita all the way through the Box, all the way to Phantom Ranch. So I was able to use the tracker to see when that section would start to be shaded in, like at what time in the afternoon. And then I timed my departure down North Kaibab so that I would have shade all the way to Phantom Ranch. It's truly incredible, and we hope it helps keep everyone safe. Again, you can find the Shade Tracker at brightangeloutfitters.com or at gcshadetracker.com. At Bright Angel Outfitters, we do it all for the love of the canyon, which includes helping you have your best possible experience below the rim in any way that we can. All right, that's it for now. My name is Brian Special, encouraging you, as always, to go hike the canyon. Take that first step. Embrace the journey. And when you get there, whether it's for time goals or taking your time, just hike your own hike and enjoy all that is one of the most spectacular places you will ever lay eyes on. We'll see you next time on the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show, presented by Bright Angel Outfitters.